Hey, this is Dave from metalepidemic.com. Thank you for checking out our YouTube video. Please feel free to hit the subscribe button below if you like this type of content, and we hope you enjoy the review. It's that time, once again. It's album review time, gentlemen.
Oh, goody.
Don't get too excited. Don't get too excited.
I didn't mean it to come out sarcastic.
Can't handle all that excitement.
I didn't mean it to come out sarcastic. And once again, the angle of my camera makes me look like I'm fucking Wonder Woman.
Yeah, it does.
Those are devil horns for anyone out there. It is devil. I'm gonna wear my t-shirt like this now, so it's like
yeah,
make it worse.
So for this review
over here,
Duncan Kyle and I have been checking out the new album from New York sludge trio Restless Spirit. The band's new album Blood of the Old Gods will be released on December 10th via Lifesblood Records. So this is the second album from this New York trio, which follows up the 2019 album Lord of the New Depression. The band also have 4 EPs under the belt. However, this album was recorded by Evan Perino at Shellshock Audio and mastered by Bill Henderson at Azimuth. Blood of the Old Gods is a concept album focused around the idea of going against the status quo and defying a society built around gratification through excess manipulation and deception. The realization that your heroes, your friends, your family can sometimes be the worst perpetrators of the things you despise. Tells the struggle of simply doing what you feel is right, and while we are told that is an easy task, it's simply not always true. This world is due for a change, as destructive as the path forward may be. There you go. I'm trying to make that all dramatic then.
Did you succeed? I was riveted.
I thought so. I thought so.
I think you have a career in audiobooks.
A face for podcasting.
Hat for a hardcore band.
I'd never heard of these guys before, Restless Spirit. So I did, a little bit of researching on the old internet. That thing they called the internet. And I checked out their previous album from 2019. It definitely had a bit of a kind of darker kind of tone than Blood of the Old Gods. The riffs on this album and also the vocal melodies are far more kind of upbeat in my opinion. There was a mention of Type of Negative in the press release for this album, and when I was listening to it I was like, I don't really hear it.
Once again, I don't think you have listened to Type of Negative. I don't think it's like the gothier sides, but I think there's a like Typo had at times delved into the kind of doomy side of music, and it is rife throughout this album.
Well,
so
I didn't really notice it in this album, to be honest, but when I listened to the 2019 album, I could see, where the reference was coming from. It definitely had more kind of gloomy tones, especially vocally on that last album, so I could see where it was coming from, but I didn't really notice it as much on this one.
Honestly, I was listening to it, and then I read the thing like halfway through the album. I was like, "What? All right, if you say so."
I can say that I can see it as being adjacent as opposed to being
adjacent. Interesting.
Next to Peter.
This album for me had more of a kind of like Spirit Adrift meets kind of like Khemmis or a kind of like Age of Truth type vibe. Like it's got a kind of sludgy core, but there's definitely like hints of a more kind of traditional metal, kind of heavy metal, and also kind of some stoner type characteristics as well. I think after listening to this album, I think for me where this album is best is vocally. Like I think
it reminds me of the singer from The Sword.
Yes, 100%. You took the words right out of my mouth, Duncan. Just again, one mind.
One mind. Either that or Too Much Time Together.
Probably the latter. Probably the latter. Yeah.
Both.
He's a great tone. Yeah. I really liked Paul, the vocalist tone, and I thought like after listening to that last album, you could hear he sounded way more confident on this album. Like his delivery on this album was way more confident. He's less kind of hesitant about kind of going for kind of bigger notes. He pulls it off really well on this album. I think the melodies are also kind of far more accomplished on this release. They really kind of like sink their hooks in. Whereas I felt on the 2019 album they weren't maybe quite as memorable as they are here. But I think that also goes for the music. I think the music on this is really good as well. I love the acoustic intro, and I'm not one for intros really. Like I can kind of take it or leave it, but I loved the kind of the chords they picked on the intro. It kind of gave that feeling of something was kind of building up before they like unleash on Judgment and Exile. And you can hear like from that track, the songwriting in general has moved up a notch from that last album. I don't think this is necessarily quite as heavy as that last album overall. Lord of the New Depression definitely leaned more on the kind of sludge and doom, but I don't think that's a bad thing at all. I think this kind of more, I wouldn't say it's accessible, a little bit more accessible than their previous album. I think it'll probably draw more listeners in, to be honest. And I think that track, Judgment and Exile, is the perfect way to kick this album off. It's one of the strongest tracks on the album, in my opinion. It's not the only highlight, though. I enjoyed Crooked Timber of Humanity. Really, some really cool riffs on there. The way they kind of infuse the sludge with that bit of melody really catches your ear. And the inclusion of the little bit of acoustic guitar throughout the track added a nice texture to it as well. Cascade Emulator was also another good one, probably the heaviest track on the release, but it's still got little flashes of melody in there where it needs it. There were little bits in there that reminded me of the Sword, as you said. Like they're kind of probably older Sword, like Age of Winters type kind of era material, rather than like not so much like High Country, but a bit older stuff.
Yeah.
It's definitely got more of a kind of bite to it. Maybe more in line with like a kind of Red Fang as well. But yeah, I really dug that one. As well. The groove on that track, Cascade Emulator, just like really infectious. Like you can feel your head going as soon as they kick into that. Same with the title track. I like that kind of more kind of upbeat kind of tempo on that one, because I did find like the time I got to that title track, I was like, okay, rhythmically we're needing something just a little change. It was starting to get a little bit kind of samey, a little bit repetitive, so it came at a good moment in the album. It's got a little bit of a kind of Mastodon vibe going on, especially on that track, and the kind of like melodic kind of lead work. But it's got a cool ending as well, very chunky and kind of riffy to begin with, but then gradually blends into like a more kind of minimalist kind of outro with acoustic guitars. The last track, Haunted, quite an interesting one. I actually got a little bit of a Green Lung vibe on the melodies, or vocal melodies, but musically it was probably the most like experimental of the album. So that last track took me 3 or 4 listens to kind of just take it all in. There's a lot going on. Tonally, it interlaces the kind of light and dark kind of moments. Does it really well, and then I liked some of the ideas, especially the really kind of melodic moment with the clean guitars in the middle. But it definitely, that was the one track that I wouldn't say I struggle with it, but I didn't hugely connect with it instantly. It took me a little bit to get into it. And I get it's the last track in the album, so as we've said, bands do tend to go a little bit more experimental sometimes on the closing track. But I'm not sure I liked it as much as the other tracks. Not a bad track, just like I felt like it was kind of missing like a bigger hook maybe. Really good solo on it though, I must admit. This was a really good album. I enjoyed this one. I think the band as a whole sound more unified on this one. The rhythm section are very locked in. A lot of the riffs feel tighter, more interesting this time around. And I found this a more memorable listen than their last album. And I just like the last album. The length is spot on as well, like 38 minutes. It's bang on the money. It doesn't overstay its welcome at all. Production also feels like quite thick, quite earthy sounding. I think this isn't quite as dark as the last album, but the production feels bigger here, and the riffs actually feel like they have more weight to them. So I enjoyed this one overall, and I enjoyed the sound of it. I liked the whole kind of aesthetic of the whole thing. How did you guys get on? Duncan, what did you think of this one?
Yeah, there's a lot to like on this.
Yeah?
I think the first thing that kind of hit me, you mentioned the production. It does have there's a warmness to production that I think really aids it. I think sometimes when kind of doing the kind of stonery stuff, I think you can overthink production. I think sometimes less is more in that capacity. You know, just let the instrument shine, which you get here for sure. Vocally, this guy is really, 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 really good. All I could think about was the sword all the way through it. I love the sword. I absolutely love them. And there's part of me that kind of misses the fact, although I love their journey to where they are now, there is a part of me that still misses those heavier moments that they had in their past. And I think in a lot of respects, Restless Spirit are kind of a version of that without, like, riff-wise, they're not that much like old The Sword, but kind of production style and sound, like in terms of like hugeness, they certainly are. Guitar-wise, there's loads going on here, like of influences, plenty of Mastodon, plenty of Red Fang in there as well, but not to the point where you're like, you're clearly just trying to sound like, or you're clearly just trying to be. That's not the case at all. It's like those elements are picked and placed in moments that suit the song. Very talented guitars on this as well. I love the solos. I like every solo. I loved it, and the acoustic stuff, particularly on the intro, works really, really, really well. And it's a great opening track. You're right. It does it brings you in a way where you, by the end of it, you are eager to find out where you're going next. Like even on a track like the Reclaimer, which is like a kind of shortish kind of linking thing as well, which felt like a ballsy move at first. Like when I was looking at the list, I was like, all right, there's 3 songs, then there's another, one intro, 2 songs, then potentially an interlude, then a couple of songs. But like track 2 is like 8 minutes long. Like track 3 is about 6 minutes long. So I'm like, I still maybe wouldn't have had it there. I maybe would have had it after the next track, but as a whole, it didn't destroy anything for me, or didn't even feel like it was taking too much momentum out. I think the placement's a bit weird. I'm kind of with you on Haunted. It's the track that we have spoken about before. Bands historically like to experiment on the last track, and why not? It's their fucking album. But to me, there is something where there's a concept in there. I just don't necessarily think it fully fits with the album it's on. Yeah, it does kind of feel like it's detracted a little bit from the rest of what they were doing. Had they finished this on Blood of the Old Gods, this would have been a great EP. Yeah. But it's not an EP, it's an album. Because we live in a weird world where like between 6 tracks and 7 tracks is albums. But yeah, like it would have been a really interesting EP. And you could have moved the Reclaimer as maybe an intro into Blood of the Old Gods, and I would have liked that track listing. But it's not bad by any. There's still plenty of things on it that work for me. Production, like I said before, I really enjoyed. It's not necessarily anything that you haven't heard done before. No. And that genre is packed with bands now. Like it's like so many bands. But there's enough in here that would make me come back and listen to them again. And there's enough in here to make me want to listen to more of them. Yeah. Which I think is the big thing. Like in a sea of kind of stonery, sludgy, like metal bands that exist out there that are on their side of things. So hitting it with more kind of trad sound than necessarily going for the kind of vulgar NOLA sound. They stand out. There's enough elements in here that raise them above the rest of the pack. So yeah, I found that a really good listen, and not much to complain about really. With maybe some song placement, and maybe the last track, which, like I said before, tends to be the artist's prerogative to do what they want. Like you experiment, go wild, do whatever you want on that last track. And they did it. They went for it. I just don't necessarily think it gels. But out with that, I love it. Also love the album artwork. It's like fucking like a snapshot from a scene from Conan the Barbarian.
Oh, it's the one that's got the kind of cliff, the kind of lady.
Yeah, it's like a woman on a cliff looking up, and there's. Yeah,
that was some artist painting from the 80s, wasn't it? That they picked out.
Is it?
Yeah, Frank something.
I love it. It could be a still from Conan the Destroyer, not the Barbarian. That's a
One of the
different
two.
Yeah, no, the Destroyer has to be the Destroyer. Can't be the Barbarian. The Destroyer has Grace Jones, and Grace Jones is hot. That's wrong. Anyway, my obsession with Grace Jones aside, what did Kyle think of this album?
Kyle.
I listen to this album a lot because I really like it. That fucking bass tone, man. Nobody's mentioned it yet, but it is thick as fuck.
It for you.
It's absolutely. It drew me in and smacked me in the face, and then said, "Have some more." And I was like, "Yes, please, Daddy."
Oh, hello.
I don't know what. At some point they just whack on that tone and the distortion on the, and it's amazing. I love that bass. The production is fantastic, nice and organic, but very tight.
Yeah.
And the guitars sound massive. I love their use of fuzz. They're not using so much overdrive or distortion. It's definitely fuzz, and that's how you can get heaviness out of a fuzz pedal. To be honest, it's fucking amazing. I like that that it's super melodic. I didn't check out the rest of their stuff, but I'm going to go back and do that because I really like this. But it's very melodic songwriting. Like the riffs are quite melodic. It's not like a lot of discordant stuff and chromatic. There's a bit. Yeah. But they don't sacrifice heaviness when they want to be either. They absolutely can go fucking hard and heavy, like on the back half of Blood of the Old Gods, I think it's called. Yeah, it's track 6. The back half of that song is just a whoa, it's massive contrast to the rest of the album. I just thought it was incredible. I think I agree that Reclaimer song is like, could have placed it a little bit better, but on the other hand, like we said, the first 3 songs are over 10 minutes in length altogether. So it's like, maybe it's okay to have a breather. It's not like it's a super light and airy breath of fresh air either. So, but I haven't really heard any other bands that sound exactly like this as well. I know you guys said that there's a lot of stuff that sounds quite similar, but I feel like they have their own identity, and they obviously have influences, but they're not trying to emulate them. They're just saying, we like these bands. They influenced us, and it's like, yeah, I can see the influences, but I think they've got their own sound, their own voice, and their own identity as a band. Yeah, I think you'd be able to pick them out of a lineup. Not there's loads of bands out there that you just can't. They all blend together, but I think these guys have definitely got that. So, no, I really, really, really liked it. I love how they sound. I cranked it up, as loud as I could get it without hurting myself. It was like, it sounds so good. This is just the sound of a band having a fucking amazing time in the studio, and I love it. It sounds exactly what metal should sound like, And I love that they're not scared to use a massive hook. They just whack it in. Massive vocal hook, massive riff hook. Just, let's get it stuck in your head. Yeah. Really varied musical, melodic stuff. So, no, loved it. Really, really liked it.
Nice. Fairly positive then. What did we think ratings for this one? Where would you go on Blood of the Old Gods? I agree with all your comments, really. I wouldn't disagree with anything there, to be honest. I think... I'm the same. Reclaimer was maybe it felt a little bit early, but it's not an overly long album at the same time. And that last track, I don't know, there was just something stopped me from totally connecting with it. So I think it's pretty solid for the most part. There's not a lot to kind of complain about here. I'd probably go 4 out of 5 on this one. Duncan, what are you thinking?
Marginally below you, but not much. 3.5 for me.
Oh, okay.
Get out.
Okay, Kyle?
I'm going to be on the same level as Dave here with 4 out of 5. That's great.
Nice. So that one drops in December on the 10th on Lifesblood Records. You can check out these guys online, facebook.com/Restless Spirit NY. And if you're watching this on YouTube, there'll be links to their Facebook and their Bandcamp page as well, so you can check out the album.